Today I'm going to start this presentation with a review of Victor's Superconscious Bird Part 2. Most of this is relevant now, and definitely something that new visionaries will need to know when we begin the next phase of this religion. In addition, much of this is prophecy because it has already happened in one way or another after Victor died. So I guess you could call this an ongoing prophecy, and perhaps one of the reasons people are still reluctant to make comments at this point. However, if you follow the guidelines that Victor's left for us in this presentation, we won't make the same mistakes we made with previous visionaries. By the way, this video comes from the previous presentation 7 in the forum. Linda and I were just talking about some of the things that we have learned and heard so far, yet there are still many unanswered questions. I believe that the angels are saving him for when others come. Just to give you an example, we've been told in the previous presentations 1 to 6 that eventually humanity will be in contact with alien life forms, and we've also been told that the soul returns. It's still a little unclear if we are reincarnated or do we actually ascend to heaven as a soul and become an angel. During the dream transcriptions I did, they talked extensively about spiritual evolution and how there are different stages, and once we reach the highest state, then our soul can join God and the angels in heaven. Otherwise, we are sent back through reincarnation, so we give our soul more time to spiritually evolve in the next life. But I don't want to get ahead of what we're going to hear in this next video, as it mostly talks to the visionaries that will come, and how we should establish relationships that will lead to a peaceful and enjoyable way to learn what the angels will be teaching us. So Victor says that there will be people coming with questions, and that the system we have will help me to prove the point that needs to be taught by the angels. Look this way, Victor. Then he talks about how in this lesson they're going to resolve an easy way to function with the visionaries. Following that, he talks about the importance of timing, which will help verify some of my theories on quantum reverse. In the next clip, he talks about how others will try and use this, and they may be adversaries that try and cause problems and question me on the angel's mission. In the next part, he says there will also be some who bring challenges from their own religion because they will not accept anything different than what is in the Bible. He continues with, if someone comes to hassle or try and challenge everything that is said, then the angels may have to step in and mention it. Following that, he talks about how some will want to eat what the angels have grown, and the angels will know which ones come to learn and which ones come to cause problems. Then he says some people will need moderation before their comments are allowed in the forum, and if there are ones that are escorted by evil, the angels will point them out. I have to tell you that with the few comments we've had in the forum so far, this prophecy has already been tested. In presentation 50, the angel spoke about an incident regarding someone coming to the forum, and their first comment was to question why some of my budgies have died at such an early age, and that they were there more or less to fix a problem. The response from the angels was quick, with the next presentation in the queue that admonished that person for inappropriately making such a comment on their first post. Then he asks, how will others in the forum know who is truthful, or who is here to help and who is not? He continues with, the responses or the questions that these people will give will show what their intentions are. Next, he talks about those who have this knowledge will know, and that will be enough for them. He also mentions how there will be ones there that try to cause problems because they never believed it from the beginning, and nothing basically will change their mind. Next, he mentions how some will get early warnings for not following the forum rules, and most will be ignored that seem to be there just to cause problems. Then he says, by doing this, we can make it a better place to learn. He continues with, if you'll make an effort, you'll be able to see who's spewing these insults. Then he asks a question that some may have about if it's okay to discuss parrots in the forum. He responds, well, it will depend, and there may be a reason that we'll have to limit parrot discussions when there are important things to learn. This is important because if we get wrapped up in a conversation about how intelligent parrots are or how to take care of them, it could go on for days, taking people away from the more important things the angels are trying to teach us. In the next part, he talks about how the angels want you to take what you've learned and protect it from the infiltration of evil that could open a culture totally unrelated to what we're doing. Then he continues with how it has happened before that a rival questions what we are doing without cause. I have to tell you that this was another prophecy that came true after Victor's death, when we had a large group and a couple of people who were only interested in the animal intelligence aspect. When we began talking about the angels communicating and spirituality, they objected to it. As a result, there were misunderstandings in the group and many people left, so we had to start over again. In the next part, they talk about how they support the way I run the mission and that I was chosen for it. Then he says that I've been attacked and cursed at, even when I showed them prophecy that came to fruition. He talks more about how some will try to cast discontent and cause problems every step of the way. He continues with how in heaven the angels have seen people who insult me. Then he talks about how these people are sad soldiers when all they try and do is attack someone. He follows that with how I have cause to worry given what the angels want me to do and how important it is for humanity. Then he mentions that yes, it has led to some erosion in my life when I support the fact that the angels are communicating through birds. Then he asks the question, what do you tell him? Yes, they have told me it is going to get better as we endure the reversals of evil that will happen throughout these lessons. In the next part, I clearly talk about a prophecy coming, and both Victor and I, in reverse, talk about how we're going to bring about a different future and how those that help here can be part of it. Next, he talks about how this future may exist in this channel to the angels. In the next part, he talks about how it was the future that caused Victor to talk, and then he continues with, there is something living in every lesson to show what is possible. In the final part of the Superconscious Bird Part 2, Victor talks about how in the future the negative talk about this religion will be reduced, and with the new visionaries we'll be able to repeat the miracle. That miracle may be when a group of budgies return and begin communicating like it was close to the time this all began. In the next part, I will be reviewing the Superconscious Bird Part 3. In the first part of the Superconscious Bird, Part 3, Victor talks about how you will have a tall big seat and how the time is really special here. What's that? What are you looking at? What are you looking at, Victor? What's that you're looking at? Huh? Then he says, with God we wait by the sun, and how you should climb into our ship that has a view that seeks with spirit. It's a flower, eh? He follows that with, you shall see what Ryan saw, a special view that seemed impossible, where you follow some spirituality in everything. He continues with, a lot we do during your induction process here fearlessly is a quest to identify what we know is in heaven. What's Betty saying? Then he says, on the ship we will pass through legendary evil on a course that's very difficult. And he asks if you can reach into this beautiful process here with some help. In the next part he says, what we're hearing is every soul that's requesting this recording in time. Now that you know what's here, we shall begin. Following that, he talks about how you'll find this inner link just sitting here, and how the angels know it sure can be an inset of life. Next, he talks about how as they think and talk, it's special, and a free part in them, and how it's a part of the possible. In the next part, he tells the story of Fuzzy, who was a bird I had before Victor, who was another extremely good talker. However, I did not get a chance to record him. Fuzzy flew out the front door one day when my wife and son opened it, never to be seen again. Apparently he was looking for me when I was working out of town for several days. This is what Victor says. Fuzzy, who flew away, is a soul that endeared a relationship with Ryan. He knew that God had chose this bird person in this world. Passionately, his heart chose to look for him. He knew he missed him and was lured away toward a storm and captured by a boy. You're a good flyer. You flew up there today, eh? So it made me feel better to know that Fuzzy was found by a boy who must have looked after him well, as he was such a wonderful budgie. It's amazing how Victor uses this story of Fuzzy as an analogy for what he is about to say next. This is what he says. In our view, if you've been lost, you will need love from heaven. And we're close. We also agree it's important to inform you God is good to people who are still looking. Then Victor talks again about the big tall seat and says, this grand seat and its goal is to take you forward. We think you can get your heart right on a better course in life. In the next part, he says that the angels want you to find sublime trust in God. Following that, he says, praise those birds who talk in a song to get you out of your confusion. You know, over the years, I've often heard wild birds singing to me in their song and telling me certain things over and over again to raise my spirits. In the beginning, I thought it was just my imagination, but over the years, I've learned to trust and believe they speak to me at times when I need it. So he says, we'd love to find all of you sublime trust in him. Praise those birds who talk in a song to pass you by your confusion. Good boy. Keep it up. You're talking nice. Please excuse the ruckus in the background sometimes while I'm recording. Simon and Lucky, the female red-winged blackbird that we have, are having a playtime and chasing each other around. So in the next part he says that some parrots ought to be heroes, as they will come with some of the same things that Victor spoke of, and most of them will agree with what I'm doing on this mission. So Victor says, some parrots ought to be heroes. There'll come some that get to talk and shall take a piece of me, and most agree with Ryan on the mission. Then he mentions that how these parrots that come in the future want to speak in the microphone, and they all have an option to defer the mic as well. After that, he says that these birds who have intelligence similar to a human is something major in animal intelligence research. So he says, Dell understands the parrots that come, and of course they can defer the mic. To have intelligence, just like it's human, is really major. There are a couple of prophecies in the next part that have already come to pass, at least 10 years after Victor's death. In the first he mentions coming to 150. 150 is the number of the condo complex that we've lived in for the past 5 years. Then he says there will be more to come. Since we've been here, Danny came to us and left a legacy of recordings similar to Victor's as well. Some even say he was easier to understand than Victor, and Victor mentions that some will be better at providing their voice than him as well. So he says, "Please come to 150. There will still be more on a mission to help him. You'll see, Budgies he enlisted, and some will be better at providing their voice." In the next part, he talks about the birds that come to us as part of the family. I have to tell you that I give Linda, my wife, a lot of credit for the time and care she puts into the 2 birds in the guinea pig family we have. She definitely does spoil them, and all 3 of them get along like siblings. If Simon and Lucky aren't playing together, they are in the cage with Oreo, the guinea pig, keeping him company. And if they aren't with each other, they are with us doing crazy little things that brighten our day. And this is what Victor says. They'll have a family that gives them much. And some really see, as their efforts deepen, it's guaranteed to have the videos up connected to a simple man like Christ was. If there's anything that I have minor objections to, is when the angels make comparisons to myself and Christ. I know I will never achieve the level of holiness that he has, and I prefer to be known as a visionary or a shaman type of a person. All I can do is try and humble myself in the face of God and man, and try to do my best to evolve in my soul and the mission. Following that, he talks about how Christ was a human who was trying to reverse evil and help us reach heaven. Then he promises that God will be able to do this if we evolve and reach heaven. And he says, yes, he was a human who was trying to help us reverse our evil and reach heaven. God helps and promises us he'll be doing it for us to trust and believe we evolve with heaven. Following that, he talks about how once the captions are validated, people will come to give us help. I forgot to mention that when Victor talked about Linda, it was another prophecy, because I met her many years after he made this prophecy. So in the next part, he talks about how Linda began to understand the captions better, and it gave me some confidence and passion to move forward. And he says, certainly, as often as we tell everybody, they'll soon understand there's reason his wife elevated his passion when she starts to understand. In the following clip, he talks about in the past, when I had over 30 budgies communicating similar to Victor, how the captions were in the process of being validated at the time until we ran into some problems. And he says, when superconscious spiritual birds support him, all else should have been validated with them. So that and the following is another confirmed prophecy that happened about 5 years after his death. Then he talks about the problems we had that caused people to pull their support. It says, his support left, thinking he should have not reversed the translations when it was their parrots who were responsible coaching him. Yes, this is true, because it was around this time that I began to be prompted by some of the budgies to reverse what they were saying and was finding hidden spiritual messages from them in reverse. Many of the people who were there only interested in the animal intelligence aspect began to oppose this. One of the things you have to remember is that when Victor was still alive, there were no other parrots who could communicate intelligently like this. So when he speaks of other parrots, he is foreseeing the future, and this is basically what I was being told by the group of budgies that I began working with over the years. He says, parrots just told him, it's okay and important to tell the future, so we can let you evoke the legend here. Then he will prove that the future is given here. Following that, he talks about how God deals with serious evil. When we talk about serious evil, what is happening in this world today definitely meets that criteria. And God knows it's time that humanity evolves so they can make that change. This is what he says. When involving serious evil, you'll see God doesn't confine what he predicts. And your key is in heaven as a real gift. Next, he talks about how God feels about humanity's future and what we need to do to have a better future. He says, he cares there are better worlds for the future. In a good future, life is different if you approach it very spiritually.
Victor
So in the next part, he talks about spiritual futures, almost as if there's more than one future and more than one planet. He mentions how humanity can be one of the special planets in the galaxy that will be saved, and how Earth has been left with humans to more or less be guardians for. And he says, these spiritual futures will be offered to a special world. Respect what you have, and you shall have one of the saved planets. The Earth has been left here with you. What's the bird telling Victor? You know, I'm starting to be convinced more and more all the time that unless we do something now and become more spiritual in the future, we may not have a future. So he follows it up with, if the future is a broken, dead world, it affects your world. We think you would question what is not helping. Next, he talks about how the future is a gift and how it supports humanity with love. And he says, if you help with Ryan, there will be lots of gifts. The future is supporting pretty much people with love. We know you know it's a gift. Following that, he talks about how some organizations have evil missions that do not care whether or not they ruin our world. Then he says that we won't listen to these evil people and we will care about the future. So he says, evil people have to know all the ploys you adorn to ruin our world. We won't listen to an evil mission and we will care. People. Then he says how we will escort Earth to a new beginning while telling the truth. We'll have to know the boy you adore? Yeah. Then he talks about those that will know we are developing a religion with love that really works. And he says, I'm sure you'll know you're the one that's helping to let love in. It sure can start the right reactions. Some do believe that we are releasing a religion that works. In the final part of the Superconscious Bird Part 3, Victor asks if you can be caring enough to help fight for humanity's future by practicing and feeling real spirituality. And he says, can you really be caring? If you could be, you'd fight for the intern. Our future should have people that let you regain and help you feel real spirituality. Okay, that's well. You know, there are so many important parts of those two of Victor that turned out to be much longer than I thought they would. So this may take a little more time as we work through the rest of the presentations. I hope you enjoyed revisiting these early presentations by Victor.
That completes this presentation. To hear more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit our website at theangelscrolls.com.